I may be dead by the time you watch this. Very possibly are. You don't know if the man is making things he wants you to see. Destroy your television sets. Now. You must listen to no orders. That's all I can tell you for this point of humanity.
The actor and comedian Rick Mayall has died suddenly at the age of 56. He shot to fame in The Young Ones and starred in some of the most successful comedy series of the 1980s and 90s. He lives behind his wife and 3 children.
So now you're telling me that climate change is fake?
As you know it. Why do you recycle? Why do you recycle?
I'm doing my bit.
So you're trying to save the planet?
Yeah.
How precious of you to think that you could save the planet. If she needed saving, especially from us, she'd just wipe us out. People in power are using fear to fuel the racism. How long before they use this racism to make soldiers turn on their own? Innocent people living in a police state.
It's already begun. Controlling and monitoring the movement of individuals within the society. Putting chips in passports, ID cards, CCTV.
They're using this orchestrated ruse to convince the public to accept Big Brother-type controls. And then they will intentionally reduce the mass of the world's population. Mass genocide on a scale never seen before. There are a mass of ways they could introduce population slaughter. More staged events, orchestrated and maneuvered conflicts, and the use of bioengineered diseases. Vaccines. It could come in vaccines.
13 out of every 14 people killed, destroyed, and murdered.
In order to stabilize world population, they need or want to dispose of 6.5 billion people. It's a horrible thing to say, but isn't it just as bad not to say it?
Questions?
These are the things that are going on in there. It's like an octopus with arms. It's many, many arms, but you got to go after the head of the octopus in this one. Who is it? The central banks, the IMF, the ECB, the private West central banks, the BIS, the Rothschild banks.
The Federal Reserve really, even though it is not part of the federal government, it is more powerful than the federal government. It's more powerful than the president, the Congress, and the courts.
The problem is that since 1864, we've had a debt-based banking system. All our money is based on government debt. We cannot extinguish government debt without extinguishing our money supply. That's why talk of paying off the national debt without reforming our banking system is an impossibility. That's why the solution does not lie in discussing the size of the national debt, rather it lies in reforming our banking system. There's nothing federal about the Federal Reserve, and there are no reserves. The name is a deception created back before the Federal Reserve Act was passed in 1913 to make Americans think that America's central bank operates in the public interest. Why can't Congress do something about the Fed? Most members of Congress just don't understand the system, and the few who do are afraid to speak up.
As difficult as it was for me, I have come to an inescapable and profoundly disturbing conclusion. I believe that an elite group of people and the corporations they run have gained control over not just our energy, food supply, education, and health care, but over virtually every aspect of our lives. And they do it by controlling the world of finance, not by creating more value, but by actually controlling the source of money. When I followed the money, I found that it took me up the levels of a pyramid. Here we are at the bottom level going about our daily lives. Above us is government, people who are given a monopoly on force and use it to tax and control us whether or not we agree. But who controls them? At the next level are the corporations. Many would say that it is now corporations and not nation-states that rule the world. They call it a corporatocracy. To acquire the world's resources and control the markets, this corporatocracy must have access to cheap money. The big corporations get their loans at special rates from the big banks, which means that those who control the major banks, the moneyed elite, ultimately control the corporations. As I've followed the money, I've learned that almost everything I once believed about money is simply not true.
The problem is we have a privately owned central bank system in the United States disguised as a government-owned system. Now, if you look in the telephone book here in the Washington, D.C. area, you look up for Federal Reserve in the blue government pages, it's not there. It's in the white pages right next to Federal Express. It's a privately owned central bank. One of the most outspoken critics in Congress of the Fed was the former chairman of the House Banking and Currency Committee during the Great Depression years. Lewis T. McFadden, Republican of Pennsylvania, said in 1932, "We have in this country one of the most corrupt institutions the world has ever known. I refer to the Federal Reserve Board. This evil institution has impoverished the people of the United States and has practically bankrupted our government." Senator Barry Goldwater was a frequent critic of the Fed. Most Americans have no real understanding of the operation of the international moneylenders. The accounts of the Federal Reserve System have never been audited. It operates outside the control of Congress and manipulates the credit of the United States. The Founding Fathers knew the evils of a privately owned central bank. First of all, they had seen how the privately owned British central bank, the Bank of England, had run up the British national debt to such an extent that Parliament had been forced to place unfair taxes on the American colonies. Ben Franklin claimed that this was the real cause of the American Revolution. Most of the Founding Fathers realized the potential dangers of banking and feared bankers' accumulation of wealth and power. Jefferson put it this way:
I sincerely believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. The issuing power should be taken from the banks and restored to the people to whom it properly belongs.
That succinct statement of Jefferson is, in fact, the solution to all our economic problems today.
Here's how it works. They print it, we borrow it, and we pay them interest.
This is garbage. This is garbage. You people in South Africa, you have your rand, right? That's going to zero. That's going to zero. This is going to zero too. Euros are going to zero. The yen's going to zero. The Chinese currency is going to zero. It's all going to zero against Bitcoin. If you don't understand that yet, you're going to be impoverished. You're going to be on the street. You're going to be begging. You're going to be out of business. You're going to be toast.
James Madison, the main author of the Constitution, agreed. Interestingly, he called those behind the central bank scheme money changers. Madison strongly criticized their actions.
History records that the money changers have used every form of abuse, intrigue, deceit, and violent means possible to maintain their control over governments by controlling money and its issuance.
The battle over who gets to issue our money has been the pivotal issue throughout the history of the United States. Wars are fought over it, depressions are caused to acquire it. Yet after World War I, this battle was rarely mentioned in newspapers or history books. Why? By World War I, the money changers, with their dominant wealth, had seized control of most of the nation's press.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish they are true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 All the Trump supporters that I talked to who were Trump voters.
He's trying to undermine the media, trying to make up his own facts, and it could be that he can actually control exactly what people think, and that is our job.
Yeah, that is our job. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets, and they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls.
These authoritarians hate Bitcoin, and it's for the same reason. Why do they hate Joe Rogan? Because they can't control him. He's not subject to their authoritarian power. Why do they hate Bitcoin? Because they can't control it.
There's only one useful thing that any of us can do every day when we get up. One thing that matters above all. That one thing is convince someone to convert some other form of property into Bitcoin.
By a show of hands, how many people hold Bitcoin? Not bad, not bad. What I would recommend highly for anybody who doesn't, get off zero, like today. We'll talk a little bit about it. But what is it? It's an open, decentralized network that's open for anybody, and no one can stop it. It's impossible to stop.
It's impossible to stop.